The wind howled over the dry fields. John was almost asleep, the fire in the corner crackling low. His small farm cabin was quiet, far from the colony city. Just him, his old dog Rusty, and the sound of rain tapping against the window. Then, a knock. Not loud. Not hurried, just soft, like a whisper on wood. John sat up, eyes narrowing. No one came here, not this far out, especially not at midnight. Rusty growled once, low in his throat. Another knock. John grabbed the old shotgun beside the door, not loaded, but heavy enough to scare someone, and slowly opened the latch. The door creaked open, and there she was, tall, soaked from head to toe. Not human. Her skin was a pale lavender color, almost gray in the rainlight. Her eyes were large, silver, glowing faintly even in the dark. Her long black hair clung to her face, and she wore a thin, tattered robe. But that wasn't what stunned John. Behind her stood two small children, one boy, one girl. Both alien. Both shaking. One of them clutched a bundle of cloth tightly to their chest. The woman looked at John. Her voice was soft, tired, and full of something deeper than words. "I will warm your bed, human. My children need a father." John didn't speak. He just stared at her, at them. Water dripped from her arms. Her shoulders shook. The children looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. John finally found his voice. "What did you say?" She bowed her head. "I am sorry. I do not mean disrespect. I ask for shelter, for warmth, for help." John stepped outside, looked into the night. No lights, no ships, just darkness and storm. He looked back at her. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Larry." John looked at the children. "They yours?" She nodded once. "Their father, gone. Taken. The war." John sighed. He hadn't been part of the war, but he remembered the news. Humans and her kind had clashed along the border moons. Many had died. Many more had disappeared. He opened the door wider. "Come in." They entered slowly. John brought them towels, blankets, and dry clothes, whatever he could find. The children sat by the fire, silent and still, their eyes watching everything. Larry didn't speak much. She sat on the floor near them, legs folded, posture straight like a soldier. But her eyes never left her kids. John boiled some water, made tea, and offered her a cup. She took it with both hands. "Thank you," she said. "Why here?" he asked. "Why me?" Larry looked at him. "I heard of you. You do not send strangers away." John gave a small, tired laugh. "You heard wrong. I like being alone." She tilted her head slightly. "But you let us in." He didn't answer. Hours passed. The fire burned lower. The children finally fell asleep, wrapped in warm blankets. Larry sat quietly, her eyes closed. John watched her from his chair. She didn't ask for anything more. She didn't cry, she just endured, and something about that hurt more than tears ever could. In the early hours of morning, John stood and covered the children with another blanket. He paused, looking at their peaceful faces. Then he turned to Larry. "You can stay the night. And tomorrow? We'll see." She nodded once. "That is enough." As the storm passed outside, something strange settled inside John's home. Not fear, not danger, but the quiet weight of a decision. A choice that would change everything, and it had begun. With a knock at midnight and a widow with silver eyes. The sun rose slowly over the dry hills. John stood on the porch sipping bitter black coffee. His dog, Rusty, lay beside him, ears twitching at every sound. But it was quiet now. Peaceful. Inside the house, the fire was out, but warmth still lingered. He looked through the window. Larry was awake, sitting beside her children who still slept. Her silver eyes stared at nothing. Still. Silent. like she'd been holding her breath for years. John stepped inside, boots echoing softly on the wooden floor. She looked up, didn't speak. He walked to the kitchen, cracked 3 eggs, found some leftover bread. Breakfast was simple, but it was real. He placed the food in front of her on a tray. "Eat something," he said. She nodded, broke the bread into small pieces, ate slowly, with grace. "Thank you," she said quietly. Again. "You don't have to keep thanking me. I do, no one else has ever let me in." John sat across from her, the old chair creaking under his weight. "You said their father's gone." She nodded. "He was called Solon, a warrior, strong, brave." She paused. "He died 2 months ago, in a battle your people say never happened." John's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "We were trying to leave the war. He wanted peace. We ran to a moon called Threnos. But there was a patrol. Not your soldiers. Not mine. Just killers." She looked down at her hands. They didn't want peace, they wanted silence. "He died protecting us, burned in front of us." John stayed quiet. His fingers gripped his coffee cup tighter. "Why didn't you go back to your people?" he asked. Larry's jaw tightened. "I did. They saw me as weak. A traitor's mate. A widow with half-blood, children." "Half-blood?" She touched the forehead of her daughter gently. "Solon was half-human. His father was like you. His blood made us outsiders." John sat back, taking it all in. "So, your people don't want you. Ours don't even know you exist." Ilari gave a small, bitter laugh. "We are between worlds, unseen, unwanted. But you still came, to me." She looked at him now, really looked. "Because I heard you once took in a broken dog, fed it, kept it warm. I thought, maybe you would do the same for us." John glanced at Rusty, who was now snoring under the table. "He bit me twice when I first brought him in." Ilari raised one eyebrow. "I do not bite." John actually laughed just once. A low, surprised sound. She tilted her head. "Was that humor?" "Maybe," he said. The children woke a little later. The boy, timid and thin, reached for Ilari without a word. The girl, more curious, looked up at John. "Are you the human?" she asked. John blinked. Yeah, I guess so." "You're taller than I thought." Ilari placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Hira, don't be rude." "It's fine," John said. "I get that a lot." The girl giggled, just a little. Ilari's eyes softened. They haven't laughed in weeks. John looked at them, a widow, 2 lost children, and somehow now, they were his problem, and yet part of him didn't mind. Later that day, John took them to the old shed out back. He cleared it out, set up blankets, pillows, and a small heater. "It's not much," he said, "Weng, but it's dry and warm." Ilari stood silently in the doorway. "You did not have to do this." "I know." "Why are you helping us?" John looked at the sky, then at her. "Because I've been alone. Too long. And now?" He shrugged. "Now I'm not." That night, after the children had gone to sleep, Ilari stood near the window, staring into the stars. John handed her a cup of tea. "You ever going to tell them the full story?" She didn't look away. "One day when they're ready, when I'm ready." John nodded. "Take your time." Outside, the stars watched silently, and inside, a human and an alien widow shared, a quiet understanding, 2 strangers, 2 worlds, now, 1 roof, and maybe, just maybe, a second chance. Word traveled fast in small colonies. By sunrise, people already knew. He's sheltering one of them. An alien widow with kids. You know what that means? Trouble. John ignored the whispers. He went into town only for supplies. Eggs, oil, tools, basic things. At the counter, the shopkeeper gave him a strange look. You letting her live in your shed, John? John didn't answer. You know what she is, right? John looked up. Yeah, I know what she is. Then he paid and left. Back at the cabin, the morning air smelled of old firewood and fresh dust. Ilari was outside, kneeling beside Rusty, his old mutt of a dog. She held a cracked bowl and carefully dropped bits of dried meat into it. Her silver eyes watched him like she was unsure if it was the right thing to do. Rusty sniffed, then licked, then wagged his tail. Ilari smiled. John stood at the porch, watching. She looked up and saw him. For a second, her smile disappeared, like she was caught doing something wrong. I fed him, she said. I see that. He was hungry. He's always hungry. She stood, brushed dust from her dress. He licked my hand. John stepped down from the porch and walked over. Then you passed the real test. He doesn't lick just anyone. That is good? Very. She let out a tiny breath. Not a laugh, not a sigh. Something in between. The children played in the dirt nearby. They had no toys, but they made games out of rocks and sticks. Their laughter felt strange, but in a good way. Like a song John hadn't heard in years. Ilari joined him on the porch steps. People stare when you go to town, she said. They always stared. Because you are alone? Because I like it that way. She looked at him. You are not alone now. No, he said quietly. I'm not. That afternoon a neighbor came by, Mr. Harlan, an old man with a sharp nose and a mean mouth. He didn't even get off his hovercart. John, I heard you've got company. John leaned against the fence. Yeah? Alien kind. You know we're not supposed to house them without a permit. She's not a danger. They never look like danger until they turn. She has kids. Harlan spat on the ground. That's even worse. You get attached. John crossed his arms. You got something to report, go do it. You're making a mistake, son. Maybe. But it's my mistake. Harlan stared at him for a second too long, then drove off. Ilari stood near the door. She had heard it all. I should leave. No, John said. You are risking everything. So are you. She stepped closer. Why do you defend me? Because you feed my dog, he said simply. She looked confused. What does that mean? Means you care. Means you're not what they think. He looked at her carefully. You're not a threat, Ilari. You're just tired. She blinked. Her eyes softened. I am very tired. That night John cooked dinner, simple stew with vegetables. They all sat around the table. The children smiled when they were served. First, Ilari sat quietly, watching, breathing, living. John poured her a cup of warm water with herbs. What is this? She asked. It's called peace. She smiled, real this time, and said, It tastes like home. Outside the stars looked down. Somewhere people still whispered. Somewhere danger still waited. But in this small cabin, for just one night, an alien widow fed a dog. A human man smiled, and two children laughed like they belonged. Because maybe they finally did. The morning started like any other. Ilari boiled water. The children played with stones and sticks. John fixed the fence near the field. Even Rusty barked at a bird like he owned the land. But peace never lasts. By noon, a sound broke the calm. Engines. Low, slow, heavy. John froze. He knew that sound. Government patrol. A black transport hovered over the gravel road, then settled hard near John's cabin. Dust flew. Two men stepped out. Black suits. Clean boots. Faces that didn't smile. One woman came behind them, carrying a scanner. John wiped his hands and walked toward them. Something I can help you with? The taller man looked down at a data pad. John H. Ward? That's me. The woman raised her scanner. It beeped. Once, twice, then turned red. She looked at the others. We have a match. Match for what? John asked. The second man stepped forward. Unregistered biological minors, non-Earth origin. John's jaw clenched. They're children. They're illegal. They're refugees. The woman didn't flinch. They're not yours. Ilari stepped out of the cabin. The children hid behind her. The agents raised their hands. Don't move, said the first man. Please, Ilari said softly. They are not soldiers. They are my heart. The scanner woman turned to John. By law, she cannot claim parental rights on this colony without species authorization. These kids are classified as unregistered and unprotected. They will be taken to Holding Sector 3. John moved between them, stood directly in their path. Not today. The taller man blinked. Sir, step aside. No. That's obstruction. So arrest me. The agents looked at each other, surprised. You'd break the law for them? No, John said. I'd break your law for them. He looked back at Ilari. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. She whispered, John, don't. Too late, he said. The scanner woman stepped forward, voice cold. We have orders. John didn't blink. So do I. From who? From my conscience, she paused. You'll lose your land. Let them take it. You'll lose your rights. I'll keep my soul. The first man reached for his belt. Rusty growled, loud. The kids screamed. And John, he raised his hand. Not with a weapon, with a voice. You want a war? You better bring more than 3 of you because this house doesn't let go of the people it loves. The wind picked up. Ilari stepped forward, standing beside John now. We will not run anymore, she said. You can take my past, but you will not take my children. The scanner woman exhaled slowly. She tapped her comm. Dispatch, stand by. A long pause. Crackling. Orders changed, a voice replied. Do not engage. Higher clearance requested. The team froze. Then the lead agent looked at John one last time. You've made yourself visible. Good, John replied. About time someone saw us. They left. Dust rose again. Engines faded, but the silence they left behind was different. Not empty, not scared, but defiant. That evening, John sat on the porch steps. Ilari sat beside him. You shouldn't have done that, she said softly. I did it anyway. Now they'll come back, stronger. Let them. She looked at him. You don't even know what we are. You're a mother. That's not all. He turned to face her. You think I care what your DNA says? You think I care what your papers say? He pointed to the children now asleep together in a blanket under the stars. They're safe. They're smiling. That's enough for me. She reached for his hand, took it, gently. He didn't pull away. They've never had a father, she said. I've never had a family, he replied. Far above, a satellite blinked. A report was sent. A name was tagged. John H. Ward, hostile guardian status, watched, and somewhere in the dark. A new plan began. The night was unusually still, the kind of stillness that didn't come from peace but from a breath held too long. Inside the small cabin, John sat by the window sharpening an old knife. Not for hunting, not for work, just habit, just focus. Across the room. Ilari stirred the fire. The children were asleep, curled beside each other with Rusty snoring nearby, a protective paw over them like a silent guard. Ilari glanced at John. You're quiet, she said. So are you. You haven't asked about what I can do. John looked up. You mean what they're afraid of? She nodded once. They say my kind is unstable, too emotional, dangerous when bonded. Is it true? Some of it. And the rest is love. She stood and walked toward him, no fear in her steps. Only calm, only truth. She knelt in front of him and opened her hands slowly. We were made to feel deeply, not just with our minds, but with our bodies. When we connect with someone, something inside us wakes up. What wakes up? She didn't answer with words. She reached forward and gently touched his hand. It was like touching lightning, but soft. Not pain, but power. The moment her skin touched his, the air shimmered. A hum passed through the floor. The walls vibrated lightly, and then the lights flickered on. All of them. The hallway lamp, the cracked solar panel display, even the kitchen bulb that hadn't worked in 5 years. John stared. The house lit up. "What is this?" he asked. Ilari held his hand tighter. "I'm linked to emotion. I tried to stay numb for years, but you make me feel again." The lights didn't just glow, they pulsed, softly, like a heartbeat, like the house itself was alive. "Is this some kind of power source?" John asked, half in awe. "No," she said, "it's me." "You're doing this?" "Not on purpose, just with presence." "So, you're some kind of living battery?" She smiled softly. "No, John, I'm a mother, a woman, a widow." She took a breath. "But when I feel safe, when I feel trust, I become more." John didn't move his hand. He looked at her, really looked. At the tired but beautiful eyes, at the strength in her voice, at the light dancing along her skin like stars flickering in deep space. "What does this mean?" he whispered. "It means," she said gently, "I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm healing." Then the lights slowly dimmed, one by one, but the warmth remained. In the air, in the space between them, in the hand she still held. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled again. Rusty snored louder. John finally spoke. "The others don't see this part of you, do they?" "No. They're scared of what they don't understand." So was I. John leaned back in his chair. "But I'm not scared. I know. And you're not a weapon." "No," she whispered. "I'm a home. I just needed someone to knock." That night, John didn't sleep in his bed. He sat by the window, her hand still in his, watching the stars, letting them blink, letting the warmth remain. But far away, someone was watching. A satellite replayed the light surge inside John's cabin. An officer stared at the data. She bonded. A commander walked over. "With the human?" "Confirmed." "Then it's begun." Back on Earth, John stood in his doorway. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "If this is what they're afraid of, they should have been afraid sooner." The morning came quietly, too quietly. John sat on the edge of the porch, cup of cold tea in his hand. His eyes were on the horizon, but his thoughts were far, far away. Inside the cabin, the sound of soft footsteps moved across the floor. It was the children, Hira and Rune. They didn't run. They didn't play. They just peeked through the door and watched him. He knew they were there, but he didn't turn. The night before had changed something. When Ilari touched his hand and lit up the house, something inside him had lit up too. But it scared him, not because of the light, but because of what it meant, what she meant, what they meant. Ilari came out, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You didn't sleep," she said gently. "Didn't feel like it." She sat beside him. "You're distant again." "I just needed time to think." She nodded, understanding. "What are you thinking?" John took a deep breath. "That I'm not ready for this." "This? You? Them? A family?" She looked down. "I understand. I don't even know how to be a father. Neither did Solon, when our first child was born. He just stayed. That was enough." John stood up, pacing a little. But I didn't ask for any of this. We didn't ask for war. He froze. We didn't ask to be hunted, to be hated. But we're still here, John. So are you. She walked back inside, leaving him alone. An hour passed, maybe two. John didn't move from the porch. His thoughts circled like dust in the wind. I can't be what they want. I'm just a man. A broken one at that. He finally stood, walked around, to the back of the house where the children often played. They weren't there. Panic hit his chest. He ran inside. Ilari, where are they? Before she could answer, a voice came from the far side of the shed. We're here. He followed it. Hira and Rune sat under the old fig tree. They had used sticks to draw patterns in the dirt. John sighed in relief. Don't scare me like that. Hira looked up at him, serious. You were going to leave. He blinked. What? You looked like our father did the night before he left. Eyes like heavy moons. Rune looked up too. But you didn't leave. Yet, Hira added. John sat down beside them. He didn't speak, just stared at the ground. Then softly, I'm not your father. Silence. Then Rune reached out, tiny fingers gripping John's rough, calloused hand. That's okay, he said. But we call you Dad anyway. John's throat closed. His eyes stung. Why? Hira answered. Because when we're scared, you hold us. Rune nodded. Because when we're cold, you fix the blankets. Because when others pushed us away, Hira said, you said we could stay. Isn't that what fathers do? Rune asked. John couldn't reply. He just pulled them both into his arms. Tight. Real. Ilari watched from the doorway. Tears rolled silently down her cheek. Not from sadness, from something stronger, from belonging. That night, John didn't sit on the porch. He sat by the fire, Hira on one side, Rune on the other. They laughed at his bad jokes. They asked him to read that bird story again, and when the children finally fell asleep beside him, Ilari sat across the room. John looked at her. I'm not their father. No, she said softly. You're something more. Far above Earth, a file updated in a military database. John Ward. Status. Hostile Guardian. Changed to Class X Protector Note. Emotional integration level. Complete. A voice behind the screen muttered. He's not just protecting them now. He is them. The war was over. Just like that. A treaty had been signed between humans and Ilari's people after months of silent talks that never made the news. The border conflicts would stop. Refugees would be counted. Families would be allowed to return. But no one came to tell them, except the ship. It arrived just before sunset, silent and silver, hovering above the valley with a soft hum. John stepped outside and stared at it. Ilari stood beside him. It's my people, she said. I figured. They want me to return. John didn't answer. The children ran out, holding hands. Hira stopped mid-step when she saw the ship. Rune clutched her tighter. Are they here to take us away? Hira asked. Ilari turned to her gently. They are here, to bring us home. But this is home, Rune said quietly. That night, the ship waited in the sky like a silver moon. John sat on the porch, the kids asleep inside. Rusty rested beside him. Ilari sat next to him, her hands folded in her lap. They said nothing for a long time. Then she spoke. They offered me something, a place in the new world. Full citizenship, safety, no more hiding. That's good, John said. They want the children to grow up with their own kind. John nodded slowly. Makes sense. They also asked about you. He turned his head. Me? They offered you passage, a home, if you come with us. The words hung in the air like soft rain. And if I don't? Then I go alone. Silence again. John looked at the stars. So many choices, so many unknowns. But his heart was clear. I don't know how to live among your kind. You already have. And what if I don't belong? You belonged to us before you even knew. She stood up slowly. You don't have to. Say it. Say what? I know your heart, she said gently. You don't need the words. Good, he said, standing beside her. Because I don't have them. She stepped closer, her eyes shining in the starlight. Then hold me. He wrapped his arms around her, tight, real, no promises, no lies, just presence. And in that moment, he told her everything without saying a word. That night they didn't sleep apart. He didn't confess love. He didn't say forever. He just held her, all night, until the ship lowered slowly at dawn. The children stood at the base of the ramp. Ilari looked back at him one last time. Thank you for giving us a reason to live again. He smiled softly. You gave me one too. She stepped closer, touched his chest. No matter how far I fly, you're still here. And you'll always be right there, he said, tapping his heart. She turned. The children waved. The ramp closed. The ship rose. And just before it vanished into the clouds, Rune's voice echoed through the wind. Goodbye, Dad. John stood there long after the ship was gone. Rusty rubbed against his leg. The porch creaked in the wind, but something stayed behind. A warmth, a quiet, a memory. Not of loss, but of love without words. Years later, the colony changed. More aliens arrived. More humans left the fences behind. And in a small cabin near the hills, an old man still lived. He never remarried. He never left. But every night, he sat on the porch and looked up and smiled. Because once, a woman with silver eyes knocked on his door and gave him a reason to hold on. A statue now stood in the center of the new colony. It showed a man sitting on a bench, a child on each side, a dog at his feet, and carved into the stone below were 6 simple words. He never said it, but he meant it.